And right now it is time for us to check in with none other than Arthur Schwartz, the food maven. Good morning, Arthur.
Good morning, and it's a nice rainy day here. I think you're still clear.
No, we're getting rain, but the folks to the south of us, like you folks down in the city, are getting the rain earlier and a little heavier than we are.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like a good rainy day, so it's fine by me. Breaks up all that sun and low humidity 70-degree days, Actually, they're coming back later in the week. So I always feel a rainy day is an opportunity to cook something that takes a long time because I'm not going anywhere. And I think what I'm going to tackle today is a dish called birria, Mexican. And this all started with some friends of mine went to the taco truck. Any taco trucks up there?
Yeah, they bring in a couple of the breweries. The beer breweries. Instead of having restaurants, they bring in food trucks, and so sometimes it'll be a lobster truck, sometimes tacos, sometimes. But yes.
Well, we have a lot of Mexicans here in Brooklyn, so we actually have a truck specializing in tacos that a lot of Mexicans go to. I don't see many gringos there, by the way. But my gringo friends went in search of the truck to get something called a birria taco. So I don't know how they didn't know more about it than what it was, some kind of meat-filled fried taco. But in fact, birria is a braised meat. You cook the meat in a salsa made with tomato and onion and garlic and chilies that you puree, and then you pour that over the meat, and you simmer the meat until it's until it's falling apart. Depends on the meat, how long that's going to take to cook. But then at this taco truck, they put it in a tortilla, fry it, and then serve it. I have not been served there, so I don't know. But my research says that the way it's done is you then get a little of the salsa / broth from the meat to dunk your fried taco. It sounds pretty fabulous to me. In any case, I can't eat tacos these days because I'm on this nearly zero carb diet. But I can eat the meat, no problem. So I think, and I decided that I'm going to make it with short ribs. I did a consultation with my Mexican housekeeper, and she said, "Oh yeah, short ribs would be great." The recipe I read to her, which she approved of, she said it's not something I make. My sister-in-law makes it though. and then we got on the subject of her sister-in-law, who. And I said, well, the thing that so back to the birria tacos. So the taco truck is owned by a restaurant called Bronco Tacos. I think it's Del Bronco. Bronco's a horse. We all know that. Any case, so I called the restaurant, but they do not serve this at the restaurant. You can only get it from the taco truck, which, by the way, those who come to Brooklyn want to know, it's on 5th Avenue and 37th Street, across the street from Greenwood Cemetery. So it's actually not a very high-traffic place, and the truck doesn't get there at least until noon. And I don't know what time they leave. I know that they're there at night. There may be a break. They may be there from like noon to 2, and then they come back maybe at 5, something like that. If you just see a lot of Mexicans on the street and no truck, you know that it's going to come soon. So birria takes hours and hours to cook, as you can imagine. So I might do that today. They have all I need to. The only ingredients I don't have are I don't have all the chilies I need. You make this one. Anyway, but I did make, so on the subject of Irene's sister-in-law, who cooks up a storm apparently, I said, well, the thing I'm really missing from, and I go to, by the way, I go to the Bronco on it's on 4th Avenue and 44th Street in Sunset Park, which is a largely Mexican neighborhood. Well, it's Chinese and Mexican, but down by 5th Avenue it's Mexican. Up by 8th Avenue it's Chinese. In any case, they don't make it. You have to get it from the truck. So what I eat there, though, are not the tacos. I always eat whatever the daily specials are. There are at least 3 or 4 or 5 daily specials. And one of them is usually something mole. And they make very good mole there. So I tell you, Irene, I miss mole. So she said, I have mole paste. My sister-in-law makes mole paste, and I have an extra container in the refrigerator right now. And when her husband came to pick her up later, he brought me this. So I made chicken mole yesterday, and I discovered mole paste. I was going to make my own mole paste, but, it's a lot of ingredients and a lot of work. Nuts, chilies, garlic, you name, sort of, not kitchen sink, and chocolate. In this one, there's not every mole has chocolate, but this has bitter chocolate in it. No sugar, I was guaranteed. So there are a lot of nuts in it, so you get some protein out of this. In any case, I'd never made chicken mole before because I never had mole paste, and I had a pint of mole paste now. And I did what Irene told me to do, which is poach the chicken in a big skillet. I actually made an enormous quantity of chicken broth. And since I have small freezers, I couldn't really fit all the chicken broth in the freezer. And I have some in the refrigerator, and I use some of that instead of just plain water to poach my chicken thighs. I did 6 chicken thighs. It took a tiny bit more than 2 cups of broth, or you could use water. And I slow cooked it, meaning a slow, steady simmer, for a half an hour. I turned it a couple times. And after half an hour, I took out the chicken. I had very, very nice broth in there now. And even if I used water, it would have been a nice broth. And you stir the mole paste into the broth, and then you let that simmer for about 10, 15. I've even read. I probably should have cooked this one more. I have to ask Irene's sister-in-law how long she cooks it, or Irene. But I don't think I cooked it quite long enough. I would go for 20 minutes next time, and it gets really nice and thick. And then you put the chicken back in. So I did do that. I put the chicken back in, and I did let it sit there perking away a little, very slowly for a while. And so it did thicken up. But it got much thicker later, and I probably should have let it cook more. Anyway, it was sensational. And it was the only thing we needed to eat yesterday, other than a lot of broccoli. When it came to dinner, we couldn't eat. It was this sauce is so rich. But anyway, we have been eating more or less high fat, high protein, not really, really high. You're not supposed to over-proteinize yourself, and extremely low carb. So I've learned about all the low-carb vegetables. One that I have not, it's hardly a vegetable, I have not eaten until the other day was iceberg lettuce. I mean, iceberg lettuce is like a free vegetable. It doesn't have much nutrition, but it does fill you up, and it is juicy and crisp. And my fancy supermarket doesn't even carry iceberg. They're such snobs. And I've been eating a lot of romaine. I must say they sell very, very good romaine. But I bought an iceberg because Bob was craving a wedge. You like a wedge? I love a wedge.
Oh, yeah. An iceberg lettuce? Yeah,
an iceberg lettuce wedge.
Absolutely.
He wanted it with Russian, not blue cheese dressing, but Russian dressing.
Yes.
And which is nothing but mayonnaise and ketchup. And now that we've discovered Heinz no sugar added ketchup, we can be a little freer with the ketchup. And so I mix, and then proper Russian dressing to me should have some pickle relish in it. And I was reluctant to do that because I'm figuring, pickle relish, it's sweet, it's gonna be loaded with carbs, but it's not really. 1 tablespoon of pickle relish is only 3 carbs, 3 net carbs, and so in enough for 2 people, I could use. What I did was I used a heaping tablespoon. I figured that's a couple of carbs each is no problem, and then I put in a little bit of apple cider vinegar just to loosen it up and tang it up a little bit. And it was really good on our wedge. By the way, a half a cup of mayonnaise with a heaping tablespoon of relish and 2.5 tablespoons of ketchup makes a nice and plentiful Russian dressing. It was too much for 2 wedges. I would think you could definitely eke it out to be 3 wedges. If you wanted to do 4 wedges, I would add a little bit of everything else, another tablespoon or so of mayonnaise, blah, blah, like that. So that was one thing we discovered. Now, another thing, Bob, came to mind the other day. I haven't made this in so long. He said, whatever happened to the cold shrimp with the ginger scallion sauce? I hope I didn't talk about this last week.
No,
did I?
No.
No, I was going to, but I never got to it. This is a wonderful Chinese, I wouldn't say all-purpose sauce, but it's got multi-purposes. You take a good 3 inches of ginger, a nice fat, leg of ginger, about 3 inches long, maybe 4 inches long even. Peel it, chunk it up, put it in. I use a mini processor. Look, you can do this by hand, but it's work to do it by hand. If you do it in the mini processor, it takes seconds. I put it in the mini processor and I chop it until it's fine. Scrape it out into and I'll tell you why, heat-proof bowl. You're going to add hot oil later. Scrape it into a heat-proof bowl, and then put into the processor a whole bunch of scallions with as much of the fresh green as you can, and no roots, but cut off the root ends. But all the white and a lot of green. Cut that up into coarse pieces. Put that in the processor and chop that fine, and scrape that into the heat-proof bowl with the ginger. Now, you heat almost to smoking 1 cup of neutral vegetable oil. What do I mean? Canola oil, corn oil, peanut oil, my favorite, a generic vegetable oil even, no problem, soy oil, whatever it is, your neutral oil, 1 cup, and heat it to almost smoking, and then arm extended. Oh, by the way, the bowl should be big enough that when this all boils up, which it will, it won't overflow the bowl. So the bowl should be at least twice, if not 3 times, the capacity of what you put in it. And pour over your hot oil onto the gingers and scallion, and that's it. Oh, I forgot, and I almost forgot the other day myself, making this. You want to use at least 2 teaspoons of salt mixed in with the ginger and scallion, and then put in the oil. I forgot and put it in after I put in the oil, and after a little bit it dissolved and it was fine. You can make it even saltier. In the old days, I used to. There is a recipe for this in soup suppers, and I'll tell you why. But I used to put in a little soy sauce even. So it's in soup suppers as a condiment for boiled chicken, for like a Jewish-style chicken in the pot, meaning basically a poached chicken with some vegetables, and then you get the broth as another course. But it comes from a classic combination in a Chinese restaurant is what they call salt-baked chicken, but that's not baked at all. But it's it's not a crisp chicken. It's like a poached chicken, and it's bland. So you put this scallion, ginger, oil, and lots of solids in it too on your poached chicken. I put it on some pork chops. It was pretty good. And then we did what Bob was requesting, which was I put it on shrimp. Now, in the old days, and this was a regular thing in my Cornwall kitchen because I had this huge island that everybody liked to congregate around, and so I put out big bowls of boiled shrimp and different things to dip it into, including, normal American cocktail sauce. But this Chinese scallion ginger was always a big hit. So we had that for dinner the other night. But I put the shrimp in a bowl, and I poured, I spooned sauce over it. And we had that with broccoli. By the way, the ginger scallion was delicious on steamed broccoli. So that's now, and it keeps in the refrigerator for days. So that's going to be one of my standard things these days. And, the thing I miss most, I guess, is not being on this no-carb diet, is bread and crackers, because there's some things you love to eat, but they have to go on a piece of bread or on a cracker. So finding substitutes for bread and crackers has been a challenge. I discovered fennel. I like raw fennel, so if you like scooping up stuff, you can do that with, it's very firm, crisp. Endive, or do you say endive?
Either one, but yet that makes a great vessel for.
Oh, great vessel. I had some leftover grilled chicken I made into chickens. It was only 2 little thighs of grilled chicken left over. So I chopped them up and added mayonnaise, very allowable on the no-carb diet. And we're going through a lot of mayonnaise. And I made a little chicken salad as an appetizer one night, and I put it on endive or endive leaves and with a half a cherry tomato. Oh, Bob said you could carry this around at a shishi cocktail party. I said you could, but we're eating it in bed watching television. And let's see. Cucumbers, new uses for cucumbers. There was a week there that I was eating tara masalata for breakfast. Breakfast is the hardest meal to figure out. It's the one you really want to eat cereal or crack. I always have high-fiber crackers, blah, blah. So the tara masalata, which is whipped up salted fish roe, you have to put that on something. So I was putting some drops of lemon juice, stirring in a few drops of lemon juice to freshen it up because it came right out of a jar, and spreading it on cucumbers. I'm tempted to try. I don't know how this sounds to you, but it sounded like a possibility to me. Peanut butter on cucumber slices.
Oh no, that's it.
That may be possible, right?
Yeah, but just you can't. You have to make it a thin layer of peanut butter. Yeah, because the coolness and the crunch of the cucumber goes well with it. Yeah.
And how about peanut butter on celery?
Oh,
you think that'll work? I think that might work.
Absolutely. Haven't you seen those commercials? Go to your Skippy place. That's the first thing they show, and it is.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. So they must be on a no-carb diet also.
Yes.
And the winter vegetables, by the way, are in general low in carbohydrates. You could say endive or endive is a free vegetable, or it's free food. I mean, it has practically no calories. It has practically nothing. So, except good fiber, some vitamins. I'm forgetting which. You know that endive. It's an interesting. What it is the second growth of a type of chicory. And the story, it wasn't discovered until the late 19th century. Somebody who was growing chicory for the root, which is, we always think of it as a coffee substitute. It's roasted, ground up, and people drink it like coffee. Or in New Orleans, they add it to their coffee. Anyway, he was a Frenchman growing chicory root, and he cut off the first growth. Looks like what we call chicory, curly chicory, like you'd buy in the supermarket. Lettucey but bitter. Ragged edges, but this one grows pretty tall. It cuts off. He cut off the greens, and it came back as a second growth as this tightly clustered leaves. And since they were being grown in the dark, they never got green. So endive is actually grown in the dark. And I don't know why it never became a viable commercial vegetable in America. It is, and it's expensive, mainly, I think, I'm told, because almost all of ours actually comes from Belgium. Remember when they used to be called Belgian endive?
Yeah.
Now they just say endive. But when I was a kid, it was always it was a very expensive vegetable back then, 50 years ago or more. But now it's still expensive, but not that expensive. I paid like $4 a pound for it the other day, and for a half a pound, I got 3 nice size heads of endive. So it's not crazy expensive, and I like it a lot. It's ever so slightly bitter, very crisp, a lot of water in it. Very, very crisp, and you can eat it raw. I think it's delicious raw as a salad. I used to make a salad of endive with walnuts and blue cheese, which is very good. You could throw in the diced pear if you like. I like endive. I cut it across into, like, they're not rings because when they come apart they're leaves, but it's maybe at least 1 inch crossways wise, and with a mustard vinaigrette, very good. As I said, blue cheese. Oh, there's just. And I used to make. I haven't done this in years. It's too much work. But I used to make stuffed and braised endive. I got this idea from the Neapolitan dish, which is stuffed chicory. Now, I've made this stuffed chicory. You take a whole head of chicory, you put nuts and breadcrumbs, you put a stuffing in the middle, and then you gather up all the leaves around it and you tie it. And I did this more than once, and after 2 or 3 times I said, this is really a 2-person operation. In fact, it's too hard to do, 1 person. And I remember Cecilia and I struggled with heads of this to make it for a party. And then I said, why are we doing this? You could take an endive, much easier to handle. You scoop out the middle leaves after you've cut it in half lengthwise. You put your little stuffing in there. You tie them up and you braise them. And then at the it didn't look that great either. So in the end, after they were nicely cooked, I wrapped each one in a piece of prosciutto. It's a sensational appetizer, but like I say, a lot of work. So I don't do that anymore. But braised endive I would definitely do. In fact, maybe I should do some today. You just cut them in half lengthwise and put them in a pan with some butter or olive oil and a little bit of water, and cook them until the water evaporates, like I do fennel, but not as much water because they cook much quicker, until the water evaporates, and then let the flat side of the endive brown a little bit in the butter that's left in the pan. That's delicious. I'm getting myself hungry.
No, that's a problem.
And I can't believe I'm getting myself hungry for endive.
You know what I also tried?
Not pasta with endive, just endive.
Are pickles allowed on your diet?
Absolutely. Cucumbers are another free food.
Why don't you slice a large pickle in half, scoop it out. Here's what I do. You scoop it out. What you scoop out, mix with mayonnaise and a little tomato sauce. That makes like a kind of like a Russian dressing. It kind of because you've got the pickle in there and you've got. But then,
I like that.
But then in the pickle itself, load it with what you want, and that's your That's your sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see, but definitely see it with tuna fish. Because I love pickles and tuna fish.
Chicken salad too.
And chicken salad, and probably egg salad, too. Bob eats a lot of egg salad. Eggs are, a dream on a low-carb diet because they have no carbs, high in protein. Actually, it's the right proportion of protein and fat. On this diet, you're supposed to have 70%, it's a lot, of your calories from fat. About 25% from protein, and only 5% from carbohydrates. I try to keep my carbs under 50 a day, and yes, I do count carbs. I know that there are certain foods I don't have to think about because, it's 1 or 2 carbs, but I do eat some fruit, and those are the carbs that I'm cautious with. I eat strawberries. Unfortunately, watermelon is over. I did buy some watermelon the other day. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And those are the best fruits. I did splurge on a cantaloupe, but cantaloupe is much, much higher than watermelon. So you got to do portion control, believe it or not, on cantaloupe. Broccoli is a free vegetable. You can eat as much broccoli as you want. And it was was a question and answer, a keto chat room, I guess you call it. And somebody asked, how many eggs can you eat a day? And the expert said 36 if you can manage.
36.
Now, it was a joke.
Yeah.
In other words, eggs
Yes.
are sort of unlimited. Eggs are low in calories. People don't realize. And a large egg only has 75, 80 calories. Even a jumbo egg, I think, is under 100. So you can have 2 or 3 eggs, and it's still low calorie.
I'll tell you, the world.
But
of
add
food.
mayonnaise, and you're in trouble if you're not on a high-fat diet.
Well, mayonnaise is like butter to me. If you use it properly, it makes everything taste better.
Yeah, well, butter is like butter.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy I can have a lot of butter on this diet.
So now, have you weighed yourself yet, or is you still going by fit of clothes?
I have weighed myself, I'll confess. And I've lost 9 pounds since I started to weigh myself, which I guess was a couple of weeks into the diet. When you lose the most, by the way, the first 2 weeks. But I was scared to get on the scale. And I'm not scared now, and it didn't move for days, and Bob's didn't move for days. And so I had to do a little research on the keto plateau, which really exists. And they say unless you don't lose for like 3 weeks or a month, you're not on the plateau. But here are things you can do to get the weight to go down. They also point out that you may be gaining muscle or bone. That's always a fat man's excuse.
That's exactly right. Potential,
I gotta say.
Potential muscle.
Yeah. I don't weigh any less, but I have more bone. My mother always used to say that I was heavy bone.
Big bone.
When I was heavy. Big bone. That was it.
That was my grandmother.
The expression.
I wasn't fat.
And then I lost all this weight when I was in my 20s. And she said, "Oh, my God, you're so narrow." By the way, I have to say this because one of our listeners wrote to me. She got a kick out of us mentioning the shrimp cocktail in the jar.
Oh, okay.
And she reminded me of the brand. It was called Saucy.
Yes.
Shrimp cocktail.
Yes.
And the word saucy was spelled sauce, SAUCE, -Y. Maybe there was no dash. Saucy shrimp cocktail. Shrimp in a jar in cocktail sauce. I don't know if I would like it anymore.
No, they were the smallest.
Probably not.
They were the smallest shrimp in the world.
That may be, but it was a good diet food in its day because it was a discrete amount. I think 3 ounces or 4 ounces in that jar, and shrimp have practically no calories. I got to say, shrimp are really almost free food, but they are protein, so they're not free food. They're actually very good food.
But the great thing about those shrimp cocktails was the cocktail sauce was really good.
I don't remember. I mean, that's why I want to taste it again. Look, I in my before I knew better, I actually liked Chef Boyardee ravioli in the can. So, what was I thinking? Years and years later, I bought it, and I said, "My God, how did I ever like this?" But the thing that I do still like out of a can is broadcast corned beef hash. It was one of the few things my father made on a Sunday morning when my mother slept late. He would fry up some corned beef hash, letting it get really, really crusty. And I still like that, but there's potato in it, so I can't eat it right now.
Oh gosh, well, it's funny you say that because my father never cooked, but when my mother went out shopping or something, and we were hungry, he would make us eggs and onions.
Oh yeah, that was my father's other one. The only 2 things he made was he of course wanted lox, eggs, and onions. So he made lox, eggs, and onions. I still can see him cutting up the lox and soaking it in milk because, that was real lox. It was salty. It was only salt-cured salmon. And you wanted to leach out some of the salt, so he would let it soak in milk while he was preparing the eggs. Anyway, and the onions. So that's it.
All
Memories
right.
of fathers who did not cook.
That's right. Okay. All right, Arthur, keep going on this diet.
Well, yeah, so, I'm losing slowly but surely. I do feel a little bit more energetic, and I think I've mentioned this before. I'm a phlegmy guy, and I'm less phlegmy, and I go to the doctor on Wednesday, and we'll see what he says.
All right. We'll speak to you next week, Arthur.
I hope I'm here.
You will be. Take care.
Bye.
Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, this morning here on Robin Hood Radio. You can find it, of course, on our website, robinhoodradio.com. Click on demand, click on Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, and there he will be. Underwriting support for Arthur Schwartz, the Food Maven, John Andrews Restaurant on the Hillsdale Road in South Egremont, 413-528-3467. On the web, jarestaurant.com. Rubiners Cheesemongers and Grocers on Main Street in Great Barrington, 413-528-0488, rubiners.com. Hillsdale Home Chef, more information, 518-325-7000, hgshomechef.com.